This week, I'm going to be helping you decide if you are a book lover or a book nerd. This is actually a fun conversation to have because there are people who just like to collect books, and then there are people who love to read them, and then there is the upper echelon of crazy people. If you're watching this, you're probably in that upper echelon just as a sort of preview, but that is the book nerd. Let's get into what that means, and let's see if you are one of them. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Read Well podcast. My name is Eddie Hood, and I talk about great books that make us think. My whole goal is to help you read slowly, take notes, and apply the ideas. Now, before we get into deciding whether you are a book nerd or not, I have a special package here. This came in the mail here, and it is for the Read Well podcast. And so I've actually just released a new t-shirt on my website. And this has come. I don't know how the quality is. It should be really good. But I wanted to open this for you guys and check it out. So let's open it up. Okay. So there is a inside joke maybe at the in my book club. And what we have is we have a series of highlighters that we use. Here are my highlighters. I've got pink, orange, blue, green, and yellow. And yellow has become the unofficial mascot for the podcast. And the reason why is because when we highlight things in yellow, that means that we don't necessarily agree with what the writer is saying, because it's okay to disagree. And so I created a shirt to sort of honor the yellow highlighter. So let's open it up. Okay, so nice. So here's what it looks like. Now this shirt comes in black and gray and navy blue. This is just the black heather one. It's a really lightweight t-shirt. I don't like thick, heavy, sort of cumbersome shirts. This should feel really good. Now on the left chest, in highlighted yellow text, it's embroidered, so it should last forever. It just says the word nope, which has been highlighted yellow. And again, that's because we don't agree with what's being written in the book, and that's perfectly fine. And then on the back near the neck is the Read Well podcast logo. So that's pretty cool. So I'm actually going to put that on really quick. If you are watching the YouTube version of this show, you'll see what this looks like. Now, if you want to get a copy of this shirt for yourself, just go to the readwellpodcast.com, and up in the top navigation where it says shop, you can see the shirts there, as well as other things like the mug that I have, read slowly, take notes, and apply the ideas. A few other things are there as well. I'm going to go put this on. Give me just a second to change my clothes. Okay, so I'm actually quite a big fan of this. This is going to be great. Again, it's a lightweight shirt, so it feels really comfortable to wear. It's just, I think it's all cotton. I don't know. But, yep, just says nope on the chest with it highlighted in yellow. And then on the back, right there, is the logo. All right. Anyway, some of you have been asking for swag, and so this is my attempt to get that started for you. Well, let's get into this week's show about whether you are a book nerd or not. So let's talk about this. To be a book nerd is a whole different class of human being. So I first started off when I was reading books. You love the way books feel and the way they smell, and you go to bookstores and you want to be in them all day long. But there are several sort of characteristics that launch you from a book lover to a book nerd. All right, so the first sign that you have a real problem, I say problem in jest because being a book nerd is actually a great thing. But definitely if you are in that group of people who spend more time with books than human beings, and you choose to do so, then you're like me. But the first sign is that you have a reading routine. It's not just that you are reading when you can, and if you get time. You've actually prioritized this thing. It has become a part of your day. And in fact, your day revolves around it. I have a lot of people in my reading community who mention that if they don't get their reading routine taken care of, then the rest of their day is sort of train wrecks a little bit. And that's not to say that that's how we should be living our lives, right? But I found for me that if I don't get my reading in, it actually does affect my mental state. It affects my happiness. It affects a lot of things. I don't know that that's good or bad, but that's what it is doing to me. And so I have an absolute sort of concrete reading routine in place where every morning at 6:30 I wake up and I always read for an hour. I do it with my reading kit in hand. I've got my highlighters, my sticky notes. I've got my note-taking system, and I'm always reading something that will sort of prime the pump for the day and really get me going. So it's something that's a little more technical, more thoughtful, usually nonfiction first thing in the morning. But that's my reading routine. I always read for 1 hour a day. The next sign that you are a book nerd, more than just a book lover, is that you have more books than you can possibly read. So and I'm sure that this is you. Again, if you're watching this video, you can probably relate to this. But if you go into your home and you look at the bookshelves and you've got books stacked up against walls, and there are books in the bathroom, there are books on the coffee table, there are books in your car, they're everywhere. They're like, I don't know, they're just all over the place. This is a sign that you have a beautiful problem on your hands, and you should be applauded for that. So I don't know what it is, but once you sort of get into this world of loving books, they just consume you, and it's like nothing to buy another book. And it's maybe it's a dopamine hit, I don't know, to get another book and add it to the collection. But part of you is a collector, part of you is extremely curious, and part of you just loves having books around. So if you're a true book nerd, you feel happier when you are surrounded by just stacks and stacks of books. Now, that is not to say they're not organized. So that's the next sign that you're a true book nerd. Not just that they're everywhere, but you have a system for taking care of your books because they're important to you. So if I look at your bookshelf, it's not just sort of a spray of books everywhere, right? You have put some thought into how you're categorizing them. Maybe you even have, if you're a true book nerd, some sort of categorical system that you've logged out on your phone or on your laptop or in your notebook that tells you how to quickly find the books that you're looking for. And you've turned your library into a real reference-based system, which is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, sometimes you'll walk into somebody's home and the piles of books are everywhere, and they'll say, I know where everything's at. If you ask me to find Don Quixote, I can find it for you immediately. I know right where that's at. And while that's a good thing, that's a book lover world, I would say a book nerd has applied the nerd part to this, and they have systematized it, right? They have made their books an organizational sort of phenomenon. So that is another sign that you are a book nerd. The next thing that really sets you apart as somebody who is more than just a book lover, but you absolutely nerd out about them, is that you like to discuss them in public. Now, this is the part where people look at you strangely because you're trying to talk about the book that you just read, and people don't read as much anymore. This is sort of something that I wish I lived back in the 20s, 30s, or even in the 19th century, where people read books purely for entertainment and for education. And you could bring up a book and people would sit down and have coffee with you and discuss that book. You do that now, people are going to look at you like you're bat crap crazy, and they're going to pull up their phone and pretend like they're listening. So it is really sort of challenging to find people like you who want to discuss great books. Now, that is, again, another quiver in your, an arrow in your quiver. Arrow in your quiver that you are a book nerd is if not only that you like to discuss these books, but you have sort of found your way to a group of people that like to discuss these books. You have actively sought out other book nerds and tried to find friendship in all of this madness. And so one way to do that, if you're new to the channel, is you can go to thereadwellpodcast.com. Up in the top, in the link there, it says community. That is the private community I've built because I am a book nerd, people, and I could not find my people. I could not find you. And so I built a place on the internet for us where we could go without all the ads and all of the mess and all of the distractions and just talk about books and things we love and sort of geek out about that. So that is there for you if you feel lonely and sad by your bookish self. Come join us. So let's talk about book habits now, because a book lover has different habits than a book nerd. A book lover is in the book simply because it brings them pleasure, and that is a great thing. So they are opening books and they're escaping, and then they're putting the book down and they're leaving and they're going off and doing the rest of their day. But not so for a book nerd. First of all, a book nerd realizes that a book is a relationship. This is something that you have to give to as much as you take from. And so When you open up a book, you are prepared for discussion, you're prepared for learning, for escaping, of course, you're prepared for all of the emotions that you're about to feel. And most importantly, book nerds, you are going to take notes. Yes, you can actually take notes on fictional books as well. A lot of people will email me and be like, doesn't that ruin the fictional book? Like, why would I take notes if I'm reading Don Quixote or Harry Potter or whatever? Absolutely, you should take notes because fiction makes you feel a certain way, right? It makes you think new things. That's the whole point of it. Now, when you're reading fiction, I would argue that most of the time it is distracting to stop and take a note and read and stop and take a note and read. Unlike nonfiction, where you can do that, that makes sense because you're in sort of student mode when you're in nonfiction. You're there to learn. But with fiction, yes, you are there to be in the story. So for note taking, I would suggest having a little note-taking session at the end of your reading. So if you're going to read for 30 minutes, maybe read for 25 and then leave 5 minutes just to sort of journal your thoughts about what you learned or felt or the characters that you loved. Maybe you want to do a little more research on the background of the story, whatever, you get the idea. But you see how we're taking this to nerd status? It's not just reading. It's like trying to wring everything you can out of this book and be just as geeky as possible about it. And it just makes me so excited when you do that. So there you go. Now, here is an obvious sign that you are a book nerd. And I think we need to get serious for just a minute here because this is affecting your personal and social life in every way as it has mine. And it looks like this. When it is time to go out and do something social, right? And people ask you what you want to do, the only thing that you can think of is to go to a bookstore or to the library. That is like the thing that you want to do. It is the thing that just calls to your heart. And in fact, if you're like me, when you go to a new city, yeah, landmarks are great. Yeah, the histories, all of that's fantastic. And we should see those things. But I know that before I leave that city, I am doing a local tour of all of the bookstores in that city. Not going to leave until I find all of the local bookstores and wander through their aisles, meet the bookstore owner, try to buy a book from the locals so that I can support the small businesses. That is Book Nerd Status 101, and it is everything that makes this sort of community great. So if that is you, if you are asked, oh, geez, what should we do tonight? And your only thought is, can we please go to a bookstore? This is a sign that you are a book nerd. Okay. So here is a unique thing. Now, this is like book nerd extreme. So it's not enough for you to have one copy of the book that you love. But when you find a book that really speaks to you, you tend to get it in multiple formats. So perhaps you have it on audiobook and you have the paperback book, which you can take notes in because paperbacks are more affordable and cheap, of course. Those are fine to write in. But then you have your show copy. Oh, right. The show copy is the one that sits on the bookshelf and it's got like gold, gilded pages and it's just leather bound and all of that. It is the thing that just makes you feel like you're in a library. This, my friend, truly signifies that you're a book nerd. In fact, let me grab an example of this for you now. Okay, if you are a Robert Greene fan, as am I, and Robert Greene, if you were listening to this, thank you. Thank you for all of your hard work and all of your incredible writing. But I love the 48 Laws of Power. I love everything he's written. Now, this is the paperback book. You can write in this. This thing cost me $26, and you can get them for cheaper than that. This is a little bit of a fancier one, to be honest. It's got, and I just got this copy in the mail a few days ago, but it's got sort of different texts in different colors to sort of highlight key points. That doesn't matter. What matters is this is a paperback, more affordable version. And then Robert Greene recently came out with the leather-bound 48 Laws. It's gold gilded on the, is that how you say it? Gold, I should know this. Gold gilded? I don't know. But the pages are gold. And when you open them up, I mean, this thing is gorgeous. There's no way, people, that I'm writing in this thing. This is my show copy for this incredible book. And to make it more fun, I mean, he's got just, it's beautiful. If you're on the podcast, you'll have to check out the YouTube version of this episode so you can see this book. But the fun thing about it is that if you flip the pages to the left, I suppose, you can see Machiavelli, right? You can see one of his favorite authors, Machiavelli, who inspired a lot of the writings for this book. And then if you flip it the other way, you can see the portrait of Robert Greene. And so this is a great example of a show copy and a great example of what we do as book nerds. We get all the formats because we just love the book so stinking much. Okay, let's jump into what else makes you a book nerd. Really, I want you to think about the true nerds in your life, the people that are like Star Wars nerds, for example. Those people are embracing their nerdiness. They own it. They are not shy about it. And they walk around town with lightsabers, right? I saw a guy a couple days ago walking down the street in a full-on like Jedi cloak, and he had a saber, had no sort of apology for it. He was just proud as can be to be walking down Main Street looking like Luke Skywalker. This is not me. I am not a Star Wars nerd. I like the movies, great, but I'm not a Star Wars nerd. However, book nerds are kind of the same way, right? We are happy to announce to the world that we are readers and we are trying to encourage other people to read. Now, that is the key. So a book nerd wants other people to fall in love with reading because you know the power of these books. So you're often wearing shirts like the Read Well podcast shirt that says nope. So that people ask you, what is that about? Nope. And you can say, well, dear friend, I'm in a book club that uses yellow highlighters that we highlight books in yellow if we don't agree with those particular sections. That's what this is. It's just a joke, but it's a great book club. You should check it out. So that's something that we do is we sort of convey to the world that instead of watching movies tonight or instead of playing video games, we really prefer reading. So you might have I don't have any tattoos yet, but you might have some sort of literary tattoo, a quote, right? In fact, if I ever got a quote, I think it would have something to do with George Orwell's 1984, if I ever got a tattoo. Yeah, because I love that book, and I'm a philosophy guy, and it smashes sort of literary love and philosophy love together, and there are some really cool 1984 tattoos. Anyway, I digress. So you are conveying to the world that you are and embrace your total book nerddom, and that could be through your clothing, through your tattoos, through the way that you speak, because you're in your spare time making YouTube videos about books. I mean, come on, people. This is it right here. Now, before you leave this video or listen to this podcast, I want to share with you my book recommendation for the week because every week I share a book recommendation. But just to recap on all of the great thoughts about being a book nerd, I'm not going to go over all of these again, but just to remind you, it has everything to do with how you collect your books, how you're spending your time, how you communicate about books, and just sort of that love that you have. So I'm curious to know, have you taken your love of books from sort of general basic love to complete nerddom? Let me know in the comments down below how you express your nerdiness around your books. I would love to hear from you, and I respond to every comment. Okay, let's get into this week's book recommendation. This week, I am sharing with you Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Some of you have asked about a book that will be with you for the rest of your life because I am a proponent of reading slowly, taking notes, and applying the ideas, which means that there are many books that I will read for the rest of my life many, many, many times over. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics is one of those. This is a book that you can read 40 years later and still be learning something from it. It's amazing to me that it was written so long ago and is able to convey so much information. Well, here's the basic idea. Aristotle was trying to find out how to live the life of happiness, the life of virtue. Like, how do you live your best life? And he tried to answer that philosophically. And what he found is that there is this term in sort of Greek language called eudaimonia, which means flourishing, to flourish. And that was the goal for Aristotle. He felt that to live well was to flourish. Well, what does it mean to flourish? Does it mean that you make a lot of money? Does it mean that you have a lot of sort of girlfriends or boyfriends? Does it mean that you're super smart? For Aristotle, it meant that you were living a life of virtue that kept you out of a life of vice. And all that means is that when we're making choices, there's usually a set of extremes on both ends, right? There's a really far left extreme and a really far right extreme. Those are usually the vices of life, right? If we live in those areas, we're living with struggle because we are completely single-minded. we're all in on something, and that usually leads to an imbalance somewhere else. And that could be in any area of your life: the way that you eat, the way that you spend time with your partner, how you parent as a child, how you address your politics, and so on, right? The extremes are rarely the place to be. Now, if you can bring that into a defined middle, then you end up living a more virtuous life because you're more balanced. And so I would encourage you to read Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Now, a tip before you get into this book: this is a complicated book to read. I mean, it's Aristotle, right? This is not like reading your current beach read. Nothing against beach reads, but Aristotle is going to require a little bit of a different approach here. Now, what you're getting with this book is it's much like a professor's lecture notes, is the way that this has been described. So Aristotle would often teach in public, and he had his own school that he founded, and he taught many students, and students took notes as he lectured and so on. And some argue that perhaps these are students' notes of his lectures. Others argue that these are his own words. But the point of the matter is, it's like looking behind the scenes of a great professor's lectures. And so they are a little, I'm not going to say convoluted, but they do bounce around a little bit. You have to be patient with this book. But I guarantee you, if you're willing to read it slowly over the next 40 years of your life, it will be a great companion for you. And this is a book you'll be proud to have on your shelves. Now, last but not least, before you leave, I just created a personality test for readers, and I'm curious to know what kind of personality you are. If you go to thereadwellpodcast.com, that's my blog where I write every day about reading deeply. If you're not a member yet, you should subscribe to that blog for my newsletter. It's free. But on the left-hand side, you'll see a little square in yellow with a magnifying glass. That is the search function on my website. Click that and type in the word personality test, and you will pull up the very personality test I've designed just for you. It will walk you through the 6 different kinds of readers. There are 16 simple questions that you can answer. And once you do, you just tally up your score, and it will tell you who you are as a reader. Curious to know, once you get in there and you take the test, share your results on social media. Let the world know what kind of reader you are, and share it with other people as well. Thank you so much for watching. And until next week, as always, remember to read slowly, take notes, and apply the ideas. I'll see you all next time.